Hello! The following slides will introduce you to position arguments. It is recommended that you take notes on the following information. In order to respect your time and intelligence, the slides will not be read word for word, but rather the information discussed will relate to what you see on the screen. Remember that you can pause this video at any time. Here are the course competency focus. The position assignment will encompass these 4 course competencies most closely. This is due to the fact that a position argument has a thesis statement. A position argument maintains a balanced tone even as it presents an opinion by maintaining a third-person point of view and careful diction. And finally, evidence from careful research is summarized, paraphrased, and quoted to help support your position while maintaining the integrity of the original source. These citations, as well as the overall paper, will follow MLA style. A position argument is the assertion of a point of view about a subject supported by reasons and evidence. So in other words, it is your opinion on a topic based on careful research. In its most essential terms, a position argument breaks down into 2 main categories: for or against, or pro and con. Here are the key features of a position argument. Remember that you can pause this video at any time if you need additional time to take notes. Your position or stance should be descriptive and detailed. You should have a clear idea of the audience you are trying to convince to take your position. This could mean an audience who is undecided on your issue, an audience who is uninformed about your issue, or even an audience who disagrees with your position on your issue. Knowing who you are communicating with will help you make solid rhetorical choices. Your direct point of view or position is communicated via a concise thesis statement. More key features of a position argument include the following. The reasons why your issue is important are necessary for your audience. How much and what types of background information you include will depend on how familiar your audience is with the topic. Your audience will also help determine what constitutes good supporting reasons for your position. And that being said, the majority of the support should appear in the form of cited summaries and paraphrases from reliable sources. You should only directly quote when there is no better way to express the point of view, or you are quoting from an expert to establish credibility. And lastly, key features of a position argument address the following. Position argument should include a counter-argument that presents an opposing viewpoint and either refutes, rebukes, or concedes that point. In the end, a position argument considers the larger consequences of failing to adopt the writer's point of view and/or has a call to action inspired by the topic and position for audience members to complete. Like almost any form of communication, the rhetorical situation is at the core of a position argument. Remember to keep in mind the purpose, audience, message, context, and culture, as well as who you are as the writer when forming your position argument. One way to engage with the rhetorical situation is to determine the intended audience by identifying the opportunity for change. A position argument also involves evidence, which means careful research. For the purposes of our assignment in this particular English 101 class, you will be provided sources from which to choose. These provided sources will allow you to establish your position, discover supporting reasons, and view opposing viewpoints. You should read them carefully and take notes. As you read and take notes, you will want to look for the following types of evidence to support your position: observation, interviews, surveys, experiments, personal experience. Paraphrasing and summarizing as you read will benefit you in the long term because those very summaries, paraphrases, and even quotes will become the evidence you need to support your position in the essay. Here is a brief video explaining the differences between summary, paraphrase, and quotation.
Sometimes you need to incorporate other people's ideas into your own writing. There are 3 ways to do that: quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. First, I'm going to talk about what each one is. When you're quoting something, you're taking what the author says word for word and putting it in your paper. When you're paraphrasing something, you're explaining a piece of what the author says in your own words, but still giving the author credit for the idea. When you're summarizing something, once again, you're saying it in your own words, but you're also shortening what the author says. Usually people choose to summarize when the author's passage is on the longer side. For all 3 of these techniques, you want to make sure you cite your author at the end, so that way you're not plagiarizing. So let's do some examples. This is a story that Queen Eleanor tells Merida in the movie Brave. It's going to act as our original passage. So if we wanted to quote it, we would take a specific part of it and put quotation marks around it. In this case, our quote is, "The oldest prince wanted to rule the land for himself. He followed his own path and the kingdom fell to war and chaos and ruin." And then at the end, we're going to put the author, in this case Queen Eleanor, at the end to show that we are using her words. Now let's move on to paraphrasing. If we were to paraphrase this passage, we'd say something like, "When the king grew old, he gave a piece of his land to each of his 4 sons so they could rule the kingdom together." And once again, we're going to put Queen Eleanor's name at the end to show that we are taking from her words. So in this sentence, we're focusing on the part of the passage that talks about the king dividing up the kingdom, and we're explaining it in our own words. Now let's summarize this passage, because it's kind of long. A summary would sound something like, "An ancient king divided his land among his 4 sons, but the oldest prince took the land for himself and drove the kingdom into ruin." So when we paraphrased, we focused on the king giving away the land. But here, we're also focusing on the fact that the prince took all of the land and the effects of that. And these are the 3 ways that you can incorporate somebody else's ideas into one of your papers. But the main thing to remember is that no matter which one of these techniques you use, you have to cite your author at the end. That way you don't plagiarize.
And remember that regardless of whether the information is summarized, paraphrased, or taken word for word, just like it says in the video, you must give credit for borrowed ideas via a parenthetical or in-text citation. Since in a position argument you are trying to convince an audience to adopt your point of view, it is important that you have a clear idea of who your audience may be. Here are some suggestions on how to relate rhetorically to your audience. You may want to pause this slide to jot down this information. Here are some questions to help guide you as you start to organize your position argument. What is the issue that prompts your taking a position, making a claim? What is your explicit claim or thesis? What reasons support the argument you want to make? What evidence or examples can you provide to persuade readers that each supporting reason is valid? What else has been said or done about this issue? What exactly do you want your audience to do? Feel more confident in its current position? Listen to and consider an overlooked position? Or make a change in attitude or take a specific action to address the problem you are trying to resolve? The following slides break down a position argument into the elements of an essay to help guide you in writing your position argument essay. Again, as it's been suggested, you may want to pause these slides to jot down the information. Here's some information on the introduction. In essence, your introduction should establish your credibility and describe the problem by including background information. You want to make clear how the problem concerns your audience by inviting your reader into the conversation. And finally, you should end your introductory paragraph with your thesis statement or your explicit claim. Your body paragraphs should really outline the major reasons for supporting your position via topic sentences. Each body paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that introduces a reason to support your thesis. It is the point you are making about your position. These reasons or points should support and relate back to your thesis. This is one way how you can create coherence and unity in your essay. Additionally, in your body paragraphs, you want to incorporate evidence from sources to develop and illustrate your major reasons. This is really the major place. The body paragraphs are really the place that you're going to use your outside sources. Always remember to explain how and why the evidence you have chosen to use and support your point is relevant. And last but not least, your conclusion should wrap up your argument by restating your thesis in a different way, summarizing your main points, and answering the question, so what, for your audience. Basically, now that you have provided the audience with your position and reasons supported with evidence, you need to give them a call to action or really answer that question, so what now? If you have any questions, please contact your instructor. Thanks for watching.